What is up, Pats Nation? It's Patriots Global back here with another video, and in this one we're going to be talking about how the New England Patriots are going to be replacing fullback James Develin. Develin, of course, has been a staple to the New England Patriots offense for many years. He's been a huge part in pass protection. He's been an even bigger part in the run blocking and helping to make sure that the Patriots run game is able to get going game in and game out. Now, before we hop into that one, though, for anybody that is a big fantasy football player, I have a link in the description below where you guys can go ahead, click it, and get this package to dominate fantasy football for the 2020 season. Now, this is the first ever and only video training course to make sure that you come out a winner for 2020 fantasy football. In this package, you can get optimal players to take in each round of fantasy football, sleepers, breakout players, and every single thing that you need to know to dominate in 2020 fantasy football. Guys, this is hosted and analyzed by social media's largest authority when it comes to fantasy football in the Fantasy Football Counselor, so you know that this is a big and once-in-a-lifetime deal. Link in the description below, guys. Go ahead and check it out. Now, sadly, the other day, James Develin announced that he's going to be retiring from the NFL. This truly doesn't come as much of a shock if you have followed James Develin throughout the past season. Of course, he went down this past season a couple games into the regular season with a very serious neck injury that ended his entire season. Him being in his 30s, having this very serious neck injury that kept him out the rest of the football season, obviously, we all pretty much knew that it might be a long shot for James Develin to come back. The Patriots have Jakob Johnson, who they kind of liked. They actually rose him up as the backup to James Develin when Develin went down, but Jakob Johnson, of course, also went down. But when the Patriots signed Danny Vitale, the fullback in free agency, signs were pointing that Develin might not be coming back for this upcoming season. Bill Belichick and the Patriots coaching staff, they are built around using a fullback offensively. They're one of very few offenses left in the NFL in today's generation that truly does still like using a fullback. Develin might not be the type of guy who is always getting the ball in his hands, via running or via, the receiving game. He does get it from time to time. We've definitely seen it the past couple seasons when they're in the red zone. They're trying to punch the ball in. They'll give it to their big fullback in James Develin, but he's been a huge contributor offensively to their success for the blocking that he's bringing aboard. Last season, the Patriots' running game had big issues getting going. A big part of that was their offensive line. Their top guys that actually were able to stay healthy were not performing up to par, and the other guys weren't there this season because of injury. You had David Andrews out. You had Isaiah Wynn dealing with some injuries. You even had Marcus Cannon dealing with some injuries. But one of the big reasons that our running game had issues getting going was because our lead blocker in James Develin was out. Jakob Johnson, the guy who to replace him, he was out too. We essentially did not have a fullback. We had to rely on a Landon Roberts. Okay, the linebacker, the former 6th round pick who plays defense. That's who we had to rely on to be our fullback. So essentially, it goes enough to be said that I don't think enough people gave it credit for the loss of James Develin and how much of an impact it truly made for the New England Patriots. Now, there are a couple ways the New England Patriots could look to go on the route of replacing James Develin. James Develin might be gone. He might have been their ideal situation at fullback, but in the end, reality hit, he's gone. The Patriots are still going to be using a fullback 100%. The first way, and I think is going to be the big way that the New England Patriots could look to go, is going to be Danny Vitale. Okay, that was a guy that the Patriots signed this offseason, former Packer. They do have him signed on a 1-year deal, though. Could be more of a prove-it deal if they like what they see. Maybe they go ahead and try to sign him again. Vitale's been with a few different teams. If you want to know the full story, exactly what you're going to get with Danny Vitale, made a video on him on my channel. You guys can go ahead and check out. Vitale is going to be a big fullback. He's a veteran fullback in the league. Again, has been around for many years with a few different teams. Been with the Browns, been with the Packers. So he does know what to expect. He's been with a few different offensive schemes. Something that I really like about him is that he's actually a threat at the next level when it comes to getting involved in the passing game. That's something with James Develin. He was super hard to get down because of how big he was, how bulky he was, but he wasn't a very fast guy, and he wasn't a very sure-handed type of fullback either. Not a guy that you put your full trust into when giving the ball to 100%, but with Danny Vitale, he's a guy with much better hands, much better speed, and would give whoever the quarterback is, I'm going to go with Jarrett Stidham here, an opportunity to have another threat in the passing game. I mean, just this past season with the Green Bay Packers, he totaled 7 receptions, but for 97 yards, in which he averaged 13.9 yards a reception. That's pretty dang good for a fullback. I think there's a lot to like about him. He was definitely, I would say definitely the best available fullback that the Patriots could get. Fullbacks these days in the NFL aren't that easy to find just because there's not much of a high demand for them. Essentially, what I could see happening this offseason too is the New England Patriots rolling with two fullbacks just because of injury concern, injury issues. They don't want to go with the route that they had last regular season, where they had to roll with a Landon Roberts, especially because a Landon Roberts is not going to be an option for them. I think that there could be a potential camp battle in training camp for this entire offseason in who is going to win that fullback option. Is it going to be Danny Vitale? Is it going to be Jakob Johnson? Is it going to be Dalton Keene, the guy that the Patriots just drafted in the 3rd round at the tight end position? I think that it's going to be a very low-key camp battle, but one that I'm definitely very intrigued to see. Now, Jakob Johnson is another guy that could very well be the fit here for the New England Patriots. He's a guy that came last offseason. He was a part of this whole NFL international kind of contract agreement. Basically, the Patriots were kind of forced into having him, but the good thing about him is that he didn't go against their players on the roster, and he didn't go against their practice squad amount. He was basically a free spot over on their practice squad. The thing about Jakob Johnson that, let's say, Dalton Keene or Danny Vitale doesn't have is he's had an entire season with the New England Patriots. He had a full offseason. He had the preseason. He even got some time in the regular season. So that's going to 100% give him a foot up, especially because Bill Belichick, the rest of the coaching staff, they know what to get with him and they know how to utilize him. He's going to be a young guy too, just 25 years old. And he's also going to fit more of that build of James Develin than a guy like Danny Vitale, who sits at 6 foot, while Jakob Johnson sits at 6'3", just like James Develin did. We've seen some pretty nice things from Jakob Johnson, both in the preseason and also in the regular season, before, of course, he got injured. He's a guy that I think fits the bill a lot like James Develin, but is a bit of a bigger threat in the passing game also. He actually is a fullback, but he actually has experience at the tight end position too, so he's going to bring some versatility. We saw him line up at fullback. We saw him line up at tight end this offseason and in the preseason games. Has pretty nice hands. He's going to be another guy that is pretty hard to get down. I like the build that he's able to bring, but I also like the blocking that he has brought aboard. Jakob Johnson, before getting injured in the regular season, had some very nice notable blocks that were actually pointed out even by the commentating staff during that game. For a guy that just joined the NFL, he learned pretty quickly and is already making some pretty keen, instinctive blocks, which I really like. So Jakob Johnson is definitely going to be a guy you want to keep your name on this offseason. Now, the last way that I see potentially replacing James Develin is going to be Dalton Keene. Now, Dalton Keene, of course, is the guy the Patriots selected in the 3rd round right after Devin Asiasi. They selected him very high up. He was expected to be a later round pick. Made an entire video on the draft selection of Dalton Keene if you guys want to know more about him and what we're potentially getting from him. But long story short, very versatile guy. He can line up at the H-back, be a running back for the Patriots, tight end, but also the fullback position. So it's really essentially, where do the Patriots want him to be? He's going to be a very big guy too. I mean, he's 6'4", so he's going to be a little bit bigger than Jakob Johnson and James Develin, also sitting at 253 pounds. The thing that's highly praised about him heading out of the draft is his blocking. He isn't anyone who's been proven in the passing game, so his hands are questionable. But his blocking has been something very notable and something he is highly praised for. So, of course, if they put him at that fullback position, being a lead blocker, I think that could be a really good place for him if the Patriots, let's say, choose to put him there. He's another guy that I would say has some similarities to James Develin. He's a guy that once the ball's in his hands, a big trucking motion, super hard to get down, something that he is praised for. A guy that when he gets the ball, it's tough to get down. I would say that this guy reminds me a lot of James Develin, although James Develin did not bring the versatility of Dalton Keene. But a big guy who can go out, catch some passes, a guy who can line up in the H-back, get some balls via running back, and just be that big body that punches the ball in the red zone. But that is going to be it for today's video. What are your guys' thoughts on some guys that I think could replace James Develin at the fullback position? To recap, we got Danny Vitale, Jakob Johnson, and Dalton Keene. 3 guys that I would say watch your name on for this offseason, because I'm telling you, 1 if not 2 of those guys will be making the active roster in order to be the fullback. In fact, for all we know, all 3 of those guys could make the active roster. Please make sure you guys like this video. It seriously helps me and the channel out, along with you leaving your comments in the comment section below. Please subscribe to the channel for all of your New England Patriots content. And other than that, I will catch you guys in my next video.